Hello there, thank you so much for stopping by. My name is ChitChat and welcome back to another episode of Planet Coaster where we are working on the Super Mario Super Theme Park. For today's episode, we're going to be working on the Bowser Coaster, specifically the last part of the coaster, which is currently in a pretty blank state. So we're going to be adding some characters and some scenery to really bring that to life. Let's go ahead and get started. Now for the first part of this, we are going to be building the character. Now I wanted a character that had a presence to him that really would stand out and would be large enough to be noticeable while you're going through all these different inversions and through the scenery that we're gonna add. And I thought the perfect character to fit this bill was a Chain Chomp. Now we're building this at a pretty large scale, so I really only had the donut shapes to work with for the sheer scale that we have to build this thing at, which was kind of a fun challenge, especially when you're looking at a character that has a relatively simple design, but how you're going to execute it in Planet Coaster with just the shapes can sometimes be a bit challenging, even for characters that should be relatively simple to execute. So it was a fun challenge to make a simple character, which I actually kind of thought was fun. So you'll see as we're adding the characterizations to this, giving it its eyes and the teeth and the mouth opening, I think will really bring this character to life. Now, my favorite versions of the Chain Chomp will be from Mario 64. If you've ever had the opportunity to play it, that's the first Chain Chomp that comes to mind for me, and that's from the Bob-ombs Battlefield. It's the Chain Chomp that guards the star that's behind the cage, and you have to do the ground pound multiple times on its stake in order to release the Chain Chomp and thus get the star. And then the other version of the Chain Chomp that immediately comes to mind are the ones from Super Mario Sunshine, which is a mission that I have a love-hate relationship with. I love it because I think it's really adorable. You're trying to help the Chain Chomps out. I hate it because if you don't do it fast enough, literally the whole island just gets caked in the volcanic goo. So you have to like save these Chain Chomps who are on fire, and you have to like pull their chain in order to release the chain once it has enough tension to kind of like pinball them into a nearby pool. And like I said, if you don't do it fast enough, the volcanic goop that they leave behind just can cake the whole island and really make that level difficult. Which it's fun that we're talking about volcanic stuff because that's the other thing that we're going to be doing. We're going to be adding scenery to this last part of the coaster to make it a bit more classic Bowser. And that's going to be incorporating some caves, some volcano style elements, lava, all that good stuff, because while we did base this area of the park after the Bowser Kingdom in Mario Odyssey, I thought it would still be fun to incorporate the old school thought of Bowser, which is more that kind of classic dragon, fire, volcano, lava elements that we really think about. And so I'm going to be incorporating that to this last part of the coaster, which sits behind the overall Koopa Kingdom itself. So I think it would be kind of, it's almost like Bowser kind of put on this face. You know, he's got this grand kingdom with these large towers and these, you know, beautiful ornate buildings, but behind it all, it's still like the same old Bowser. He's got all the lava and he's spewing fire and all that stuff. So I thought it'd be fun to incorporate that in the later part of the coaster. And plus, I was inspired by the new Jurassic Velocicoaster, which opened up at Universal Studios in Orlando, Islands of Adventure, and the rock work that they incorporated into that ride as you go into the Velociraptor paddock is just really well done. It's so well incorporated. It's almost like effortless how good it looks entwined with the coaster. It's like a paintbrush stroke. I can't describe its aesthetics well enough. You just have to like look up a picture of it or a video of the overall land itself in that area, because there are no POVs yet because the ride's not officially opened, but just how it incorporates with the aesthetics and the landmarks that they have in there. It's just really, really well done. So I wanted to incorporate rock work and have this coaster kind of weaving in and out of it in a couple of areas. So I thought it would be fun to have that along with the lava elements to bring it all together. So as we're building this Chain Chomp, I thought this would be a good opportunity to talk about one of the comments that we got on the last video, which was from Julian. And they say, what are your thoughts on the Super Nintendo world? And also that we should add a Ferris wheel themed on Bowser Jr.'s clown car or something else. Now, in the original version of this Mario Park, a long time ago when I was building a theme park that was just going to have little mini lands based off of different gaming IPs, there was a Superstar Ferris wheel. And while that is a simple flat ride that we could add, I'm really trying to stick to what we've got built in the park thus far that's already planned, because resources in this park are getting pretty low. Like, I have to always have it on pause in order to really build anything, just because I have so much in this park already. And so after we're done with the Bowser coaster, we're going to go back to Luigi's Mansion. We're going to finish that up. And then lastly, we're going to put together the Mario Kart attraction. So depending on my state of mind after we're all done with that, maybe we'll add a few more things, but I really want to try and just focus on these last few projects to get this park done, because it's been a while. We've been building this park for quite a while. So I want to finish it as soon as possible so we can maybe move on to the next project. But if there are resources and if there's like enough time, maybe we'll go and see if we can add a couple of new items here and there, or some flat rides to maybe fill out the park a little bit more. But for the time being, I think we're going to stick with what we've got planned. But I do appreciate that feedback. Thank you so much. And to answer your next question, or your previous question about the Mario Park, which I have kind of talked about a little bit here and there in the previous videos, but just to kind of give my overall thoughts of the park and all of its attractions in just one go, the area of that park is beautiful. It's so well executed. The fact that you go in through this warp pipe and suddenly you're in Princess Peach's castle that's playing the classic Mario 64 theme when you walk in there, and even the portraits change from like the standard version that we all know from Mario 64 to Bowser Jr. messing with it somehow. So cool. And then of course when you walk through the castle, like, I can only imagine it would be a similar feeling to what I had when I walked into Batu the first time, which was the Star Wars area at the Disney parks. And just having my mind blown, just like, oh my God, this thing that I grew up with that I love so much is here. It has a physical representation. Holy cow, that's a full-scale Millennium Falcon. Oh my God, that's an X-Wing. Like, my mind was just blown. So I feel like I'm gonna have a very similar experience if and when I get to go to either that park or experience the smaller version that's going to be coming to Universal Studios in Hollywood. And I think I heard Florida's also getting it to the full extent, but that it's going to be a while from now because they're trying to wrap up projects that they've already started. I'm just hoping that I get to experience one day, because I know I will have a very similar reaction, which is like, oh my gosh, this franchise that I love is it's here. Like, it's real, it exists, holy cow. And Universal, I think in general, has just received criticism from relying on screens too much for its attractions, where a practical set or a practical element, whether it's an animatronic or just an object, could have been there instead. So I feel like they took that criticism to heart, because that land is so full of animatronics and movement that it's absolutely insane. Now, of course, the Mario Kart attraction itself does utilize a lot of screens, but there are practical elements in there. There are animatronics in there, and it's an AR experience. So it's an augmented reality experience, which would require a lot of screen-based technology in order to work appropriately or to, execute on that idea. And so I feel like that ride kind of gets a pass in using screens, because it's almost out of a necessity. It would be almost like complaining that, well, Star Tours uses a screen. Like, yeah, it's a simulator ride. It has to use a screen. So I feel like they get a pass in that regards. And I've seen a lot of critiques on the Mario Kart attraction for being a slow-moving dark ride when, Mario Kart, you think about going fast. And the way I think about it is, there's only so much information you can get from a POV. Like, obviously you can see all the elements, you can understand like maybe, how it's put together or the general vibe of it. But unless you're actually in that ride vehicle riding it for yourself, you might not be getting the full extent of it. Like, I'll watch POVs of rides I've even been on, and I'll still feel like I'm not getting the whole thing, because there's only so much you can get from a video. A good example of this is before the pandemic, we were at Universal Studios and we rode the Jurassic World ride when the incomplete Indominus was in there. And now that Universal is back open, there's the new Indominus animatronic for the finale. And that was like one of the last rides I got to go on before all of this stuff happened. And even then, I'm like, I'm not getting the full experience. I've just been on this ride, and a year later, I still feel like I'm not getting the full experience because you can't even get really a good sense of scale. Like, you'd be like, yeah, that's a big dinosaur, but you really don't know that until you're like literally looking at it, like the sheer scale of this thing. So I feel like the Mario Kart attraction specifically, like it's one of those things that would be so hard to really decipher in your mind unless you're actually riding it. Plus, cameras capture visual information differently than our human eye does. So even when you're watching like these super low light videos, which are really cool from like a technical standpoint, because wow, technology is amazing and we're able to capture all that information in almost literal darkness, but it does kind of like change the way you would perceive that attraction, because a lot of dark rides require darkness in order to work. So when you use low light, that's really kind of taking away from some of the ways things would be revealed. So again, just another element to it that you really need to be on that ride in order to experience it. I even have an Oculus, and I'll watch like 360 videos of POVs of rides, and I'm still like, man, it's so close, but you're not actually there. But I think the Mario Kart attraction just looks really cool. I love that the practical sets really capture that stylization. Like the cloud section is really cool. You have all these like illuminated clouds when you're in the sky part of the ride, and it just like really stands out. And I think that transitions from the more Luigi's Mansion, like spooky haunted house style, which has all those like warped platforms, and it looks like it's kind of turning in on itself, which they did partially practically, but also implemented like scene extensions through the screens, which is really cool. So I just think they found a good blend of the two. Now, the Yoshi Omnimover style attraction is also really adorable. It adds that kinetic energy to the park, which is very cool. And of course, it's Yoshi, so for me, automatically, it's amazing. And it looks like they also gamified that ride as well by incorporating in the lap bar. It looks like there's 3 eggs, and I assume you're supposed to press those eggs when you see them on the ride in order to get points. And it's a relatively simplistic ride. There's only like one major scene to it that's a dark ride, and then the rest are like animatronics that you would see from the outside of the attraction. But I think what gives it like a reason to ride is you're seeing more of the land from a height, that you can see more of those animatronics, because I feel like some of the things that they've built with the sheer scale and verticality of it, you wouldn't be able to appreciate it as much from the ground level. So being on that ride, I feel like gives you a moment to appreciate the land even more. And just the technology that they incorporated into it with the Magic Band style gamification Mario bands that, you could be on like Team Mario, Yoshi, Toad, Luigi, Peach, Daisy. I think that's all of them. They didn't do any of the villains, which is unfortunate because I would have loved a Bowser Jr. one, but it's cool because you're kind of on a team. And so not only is it tracking your scores independently, but it's also tracking, like, if you got a Mario band, you're on Team Mario, which is really cool. And you can use them as amiibo when you're home, which is a really nice touch to, increase the longevity of these things. Because, when you buy like the Harry Potter wands, they're only interactive really with the park. Like, you can only do stuff with them in the park. Other than that, they're just a wand. Whereas with this band, it works in the park, but you can also use it as amiibo at home. To what extent, I don't know, because I don't have one, so I don't know what it actually does. But it's cool that there's any sort of functionality to it, outside of the park, which I think just adds another layer. And to go off of the whole technology thing, even what they did with the costumes, with Mario and Luigi specifically, they talk. There's audio coming from their costumes. They blink, and they're just really well done. It's like that Mickey costume that they were using for some of the stage shows where Mickey could blink and talk, but they're doing that for roaming characters, which is super impressive. So that's just my overall thoughts on the land. I just think it's really, really well done. And surprisingly, that was a topic that was long enough to get us through the whole build section of today's video. So as you can see, we have implemented the chain chomp. We have implemented some rock work. I'm going to be continuing to add a little bit more detail to this section of the coaster. Of course, we need to do a smoothing pass on the coaster itself, do some final modifications, but I would say we're about 90% there with the Bowser coaster. I'm really happy with how this has turned out so far. I haven't done a lot of extreme coasters, so this has definitely been a fun challenge for me, incorporating the thematic elements while still making it a thrill ride. And of course, we can't end today's episode without actually doing a POV of this ride. So that's it for me. Thank you all so much for watching. I really appreciate it. And as always, I will chat with you on the next video.